So with an entangled state, we're unable to say that it's something that, using our people, Alice has tensor something that Bob has. We're not able to describe the state in this way. Now, physically, that leads to some strange things. And what I want to write down for you next is what happens if one of these people measures their part of the state and what happens to the other one. Okay? So let's suppose we look at measuring a Bell state. Let's say we measure Alice's qubit. Of the Bell state. 0, 0 plus 1, 1 over the square root of 2 in the computational basis. Meaning we have a measurement, a projective measurement, where our measurement operators are 0, 0, and 1, 1. Okay? So we're just going to measure one of the qubits. We're going to measure Alice's, and let's say that's on the first one. So really, just like the way we did a multi-qubit circuit, if there was just an operation on one of the qubits, it was tensor identity. Do you remember this? So really, the measurement operator is going to be whatever it is, tensor identity on the other qubit, where nothing is happening. So let's see what happens. Let's suppose Alice makes a measurement and she measures the outcome 0. What's going to happen to the state? We have to use the state update rule from the third postulate. Do you remember that one? It says that the state gets mapped to whatever operator was measured, applied to the states, and then you have to normalize it, square root of P of M. Third postulate, state update rule. So let's suppose that Alice made a measurement and she got the outcome 0. So that means that this Bell state, we'll know this by various notation. Let me call this for now capital phi 1. So what's going to happen to this Bell state when Alice measures the outcome and she gets outcome 0, for example? So using the third postulate, phi 1 is going to get mapped to 0, 0, tensor identity. Remember, this is the measurement operator. And then we have 2 qubits, so nothing's happening to the second one, so I tensor that with identity. That's going to act on the state, phi 1. And then I need to normalize it by the probability. And this will be the first of likely several instances where I be a proper quantum information scientist and just ignore the normalization because it doesn't matter for the analysis. So I'm omitting the normalization square root of P of M for now, but you shouldn't do this, for example, on your homework or quiz. Just know that it's there. So let's see what happens to this state. So this is going to be equal to 0, 0, tensor identity, and that's going to act on 0, 0 plus 1, 1 over the square root of 2. And now what's going to happen is I have to apply a tensor product of operators to a tensor product state. So writing it out a little bit explicitly, it's going to be 0, 0. That's the operator on the left of the tensor product. And then I'm going to have that acting on the state 0, tensor identity acting on the state 1. Sorry, still 0 here. Identity acting on the state 0. So that's this 0, the leftmost 0, and then the rightmost 0. And then the same thing over here, plus 0, 0. Here acting on cat 1, tensor identity acting on cat 1. And going to be another proper quantum information science. I'm going to omit that 1 over the square root of 2 because it won't really matter for the punchline of the story here. So who could tell me what this is equal to, what this simplifies to? You have 2 inner products to evaluate. This 0 inner product 0 and this 0 inner product 1. The first one is 1, right? And the second one is 0. These are orthogonal, 0 and 1. So this whole term goes away. And I'm left with 0, tensor, 0. Does everyone agree? This is the ket 0 here. This was equal to 1. Identity acting on 0 doesn't do anything, so that 0 doesn't change. OK, so let's zoom out a little bit, and let's try to interpret this. Alice measured her part of the Bell pair, and we suppose she got the outcome 0. Now, what state is Bob's qubit in? It's just the one on the right of the tensor product that's 0, right? Alice measured 0, so she, of course, gets 0. But Bob's state also collapses, in the sense of to the 0 state. If Alice measured the state 1, Bob would also, you should be able to go through the same analysis. Bob's qubit would end up in the state 1. It would be 1 tensor 1 again. OK? So the measurement outcomes are correlated. This is a case of correlations between quantum states. And that's the way that I want you to think about this. The reason we don't use the word correlation, we use entangled, is because it's actually a stronger correlation in a sense than what you can achieve classically. And that's what the Bell inequality, which is in chapter 2.6 that I mentioned last time, is all about. So let me ask you a question. If Alice measures her qubit, and then Bob's qubit ends up to be the same thing, can Alice utilize that in any way? For example, let's suppose Alice wants to send a message to Bob. Can she use this protocol to send a message? I saw one half yes and one no. So you might think that because whatever Alice measures, that's what Bob's qubit ends up being. That's kind of sending a message. But the issue with that is Alice doesn't know what she's going to measure. We suppose, for example, that she measured outcome 0. And if you work that through, that would be a probability of 1/2 of getting that. There's also a probability of measuring outcome 1 with 1/2. So it's sending a random message if you want to try to interpret it in that way. There's no way that you could use this to actually send a message. So the entangled part of the state, or the entangled state, sort of does have this effect where doing an operation on one part of the state does affect the other one. But in this case, we're not able to use that to actually do useful communication because whatever we measure is going to be random.